Welcome to the Boschcast with James Boschman and Denise Young, where we talk about Manitoba real estate and everything else that's on our minds.
Hey everyone, it's James and Denise here. Welcome to the Boschcast. I guess this is the first one of 2024.
Yeah.
I was totally down for doing one earlier, but I'm still getting over a nasty virus that I got when Tara and I went to Vancouver. We caught something and brought it home, and we were sick for a while, and I still have this like cough. So if I start coughing, I apologize. But I just figured if it would have been way worse a week ago,
Even a week ago, yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to get through even this sort of conversation without hacking. So
Yeah.
but yeah, it's been a while, and there's been a lot of stuff happening in the market in Winnipeg, and with interest rates and stuff like that. And I know it's what everybody's talking about right now, interest rates and what's going to happen, which we can kind of dive into a little bit, just anecdotally based on what we are seeing firsthand out there. But before we start, I think I should, I got some pretty juicy dad jokes that I can share with the world.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll start with this one. Whenever we make pizza at home, my wife's job is to shred the cheese. She's the greatest. I got fired from the bank today. The woman asked me to check her balance, so I pushed her.
Oh, jeez.
And the last one. My friend Joe just got done with the Dolly Parton diet. It made him Jolene, 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 Jolene.
OMG.
Oh, those are gold.
Awesome.
So what's going on with you?
Oh, it's the beginning of the year, and lots of people contacting, wanting to, start thinking about what they're going to do this year, if they're going to sell, if they're going to buy, if they're, what's happening. But yeah,
it's really interesting. I was talking to a mortgage broker from Dominion Lending last week.
Yeah.
And he was saying that there was like an independent report or a survey or something like that that Dominion Lending, I guess, had paid for.
Okay.
And so I don't know how independent it is, but basically they wanted to look at how many people were pulling or applying for new mortgages, like new mortgage applications and loan applications year over year, like compared to this time last year. And from January last year to January this year, the data basically suggests that new mortgage applications are up over 40%.
And that's across Canada or in Manitoba?
Across Canada.
Okay.
So, I mean, that is pretty encouraging.
Yeah.
And he basically said that the applications that he's getting right now are a mix of people who have, like he said, it's pretty much a 50-50 kind of mix of people who have previously applied and had maybe rate holds, like they had pre-approvals based on lower rates, and then they got discouraged by the rising interest and they just couldn't find a house that they wanted.
Right.
and they let their pre-approval lapse,
Okay.
didn't purchase, and they are now coming back and getting reapproved, and they are very serious. They've been pent up and waiting for something to happen, some sort of good news, a good sign from the interest rate market, and so they're figuring it out right now. Like they're getting all their ducks in a row.
Yeah.
And then the other half of the new applicants are brand new people who have zero preconception of what we went through in the last few years with low
Mhm.
rates going up, and all the volatility. Um, they're just like happy to get into a house, right? So,
Right.
um, and he said there's a bit of relocation as well, applications coming in, referrals from other mortgage brokers across Canada that are seeking to move to Manitoba or to more affordable markets, from some of the more interest rate sensitive markets like Toronto and Vancouver and different parts of Ontario. So um, that is all like leading to this pent up demand story again in our,
Right.
and like you said, like a lot of people are calling and inquiring about, like, sellers. I'm getting a lot of people that have purchased with me back in 2017, 2018, 2019, and
Right.
they're wanting to move out of the city now, or they're wanting to upsize or
Right.
downsize. Um, and so they want to know, how has the past couple years affected my market value, and what is the market like in today's market. So I've had a few market evaluations where I've gone and looked at people's homes and talked to them about what they've done to their place and all that kind of stuff, and
Right on.
what they should do to get their house ready.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's like when I tell people that things are like seemingly like uh, getting a little bit crazy again, um, they're like shocked, you know, and
Yeah.
they're like, well, how could it be when rates are 5%? And so I explained to them, like, anecdotally, there's a lot of people that are getting into the market that for them 5% is nothing. Like,
It's
it's
normal. Yeah.
for a dual income family, it's it is what it is. So
Mhm. It is what it is. If we want to proceed with our plans, we have to deal with it because
yeah,
we'll never be 2 and 3 again.
yeah, and like the people who chose to wait and sit on the sidelines are the same people that they try to target the market, and it's very difficult to do that, right? Like,
Sure.
the whole idea of buy low, sell high. Everybody wants to do that. But if everybody wants to do that, now you're competing and you're potentially overpaying. And so that, like, mentality kind of goes out the window, because sure,
Well,
you
it's hard
could
to
have,
do both at the same time, right? Like
yeah,
you're either selling high and buying high, or you're selling low and buying low.
exactly.
So, and yeah, unless you don't have that other side to the equation,
Yeah,
people that are downsizing to move into like the care home
yeah,
or assisted living or whatever, yeah, they can sell high. But
yeah,
again, you're probably not picking a time based, like for something like that, you're probably not picking a time based on how the market is. You're picking a time based on the needs of the individual,
right.
right? So you're not, yeah.
Yeah, so that's been just really interesting, like, conversations I've been having with people. And then, you know, I was on Instagram the other day,
Hmm.
and I guess I don't know if there were two properties or just one property, but a few uh, a few agents that you and I both know were posting reels on their Instagram, saying, you know, we just wrote an offer on a property with our client and there are 28 offers on it.
Right.
If you are thinking about selling, now's the time, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, that is insane. Like
Yeah.
28
Inventory is still really low.
yeah.
Yeah. It's not
So
2021 and 2022 low,
yeah,
but it's still low for pre-COVID.
yeah. I,
Yeah.
I think that the demand is definitely outpacing the supply at
Sure.
this current point that we're at because a lot of sellers are still on the fence
Yeah.
and about listing. So they're a little bit that hesitation is causing them to like, second guess and maybe they're getting their house ready.
Yeah. Some people are getting their house ready. Some people are scared of where they're going to live
Yeah.
if their house does sell this fast, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Plus there's no inventory, like
yeah, are they going to be able to buy something?
the lack of inventory is just keeping people in place, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, and it's like that. I'm getting a lot of people that want to sell and move outside of the city, which will kind of lead us into our topic this week about
Yeah.
purchasing a home in the country. So it kind of ties in nicely. But depending on the community, um, and how many amenities that community provides, I'll just use like Stonewall as an example.
Yeah.
So the market is so tight in that town that there are realtors posting um, come to market posts, which you're not really supposed to do. There are new rules about that now. Like you have to
Yeah.
put it on the market within a certain amount of time.
Yeah. You only have a couple
But
days. They're selling it within those couple days.
yeah, like they're selling like before they hit the MLS. Like
Yeah.
I have some people that they actually want to sell their home in Stonewall and they want to upsize in a more mature neighborhood in Stonewall. And there was a local realtor who had posted on Instagram that there was a split level house coming to market. And um, by the time my clients had told me about it and I contacted the agent, they had an offer already.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's happening everywhere.
Yeah.
If I was to make a prediction, so I kind of have two predictions. I have a prediction as it pertains to interest rates and what's happening on a macroeconomic level. I also have a prediction about like our local market inside Winnipeg and outside Winnipeg. So I guess I'll start with the interest rate. So the core inflation data is a lot higher than the Bank of Canada anticipated. It's because jobs data is coming back a lot higher, GDP is a lot higher. Um, there's a lot of factors. There was a report that had come out, I think yesterday or the day before, that I saw on Bloomberg that said one of the biggest driving factors to core inflation, the CPI number that the Bank of Canada uses to make their policy decision, is
Mhm.
actually mortgage interest cost. So because the interest rates are higher, it's adding to that CPI basket, that core inflation basket, which is preventing their number from coming down to 2%.
Okay. Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
um, and job like there were a lot of economists, even up to 6 months ago, that were coming out and they were saying that the States was going to be in a recession, Canada was going to be in a recession, um, and there was no way they could land the plane, kind of thing. Like the Bank of Canada could land the plane and get us out of it.
Right.
In the States, there is no landing at all. There's no soft landing, there's no hard landing, there's no recession. It's just their economy is just ripping right now, and it's just like back to normal,
Oh, wow.
And so the Fed, which is the central bank for the U.S., they're not outright coming out and saying that they're going to start cutting, but they're talking about like when will this happen? We have to time it. We have to watch the market and all that kind of stuff. So they're pretty dovish on it, and they held their rate, their last Fed meeting, And so everybody's gearing up now. Like all the central banks are kind of gearing up to drop, but they're trying to figure out when to do it. It's likely that if the Fed wasn't involved, like if the US, if we weren't impacted by the US,
Hmm.
we would probably have to start dropping our, like Bank of Canada would have to start dropping our interest rates in March or April. Because Canada's story in terms of the economy is has so much to do with real estate, because so much of our wealth is in our real estate, and the way that our mortgages are structured with 5-year fixed mortgages instead of the States where it's 25 or 30-year mortgages. That means your interest rate in the States is locked in for that amount of time. Here we have to renew. So because
Right.
we have this impending renewal crisis, they call it, coming up, they may have to, they're seriously considering dropping. If the States drops before we do, then there's importation, exportation of inflation, which keeps our numbers higher. So that's another thing that the Bank of Canada is seriously looking at right now. But it's very likely that by June, we will have cuts starting. And if the States drops before us, people are speculating that Canada will drop before the States. But if the States drops before us, then we will likely have to drop quicker too. So how is that going to impact our market? Well, we're already seeing pent up demand right now. At interest rates are at 5%.
Right.
When things get cheaper, like when money gets cheaper to borrow, and people can qualify for more,
Hmm.
we're likely to have a delayed spring market, in the sense where if interest rates drop in June, we may see a huge influx of activity in June and throughout the summer. We may not
Right.
have a typical like summer slump market here, where things kind of slow down. And then
Hmm.
what we saw during COVID was, when rates were so low, people were willing to go further and further outside of the city if it meant that they didn't have to be caught up in a bidding war, if they didn't have to compete, if they didn't have to, like, if it meant that they can get a good house
Yeah.
and they could work from home, there's Wi-Fi, all that kind of stuff. Like, people were willing to go further and further out. When interest rates started going up, there was a contraction. People started not doing that as much.
Right.
We may see that again. And a lot of these communities that have a lot of amenities, like a Stonewall or an Oak Bank or Niverville,
Never really.
may go through a boom again,
Right.
in their markets. That's a very real possibility. So, if people are concerned about rates, just know that it's likely not going to get any worse than it is right now. It's likely going to get better, but that depends on which side of the transaction you're on. If you're on the listing side, it's going to get better. If you're on the buying side, it may get harder.
Right.
So there is kind of a time right now to get into the market and try to take advantage of some of those properties that are sitting or are overpriced, where you can negotiate, because when the tide turns, you may not have that opportunity. And
Right.
um, and ironically, now is the time to get into a variable rate, because if the entire economy and the market is predicting interest rates coming down, like, you want to ride it, you want to ride the variable on the way down, and
Right.
you can always lock in at your comfort level, you know. So I don't know if mortgage brokers. I didn't talk to my guy about whether or not he's recommending variables, but um, or like shorter term fixed rates. But you know, yeah, it's just going to be a very interesting year. Um,
It for sure will be.
and
Yeah.
it may get crazy again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I don't think it'll be 2022 crazy,
no,
but I don't think 2022 crazy. But I mean, when I even when you look at the inventory for 2022 compared to right now, it's like we have double the inventory from 2022.
Yeah.
It's still low compared to
Like a
all of
balance.
the years pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And but yeah, like it's still low, but we're not going into it as bad off as we were in 2022. So I feel like it won't be that nuts, but yeah, you never know, because there is a lot of pent-up demand for housing. People, in the last year and a half haven't done as much moving as, they wanted to do. With half of the applications being like a renewal of their application, I'd say that, that proves that, right? That people wanted to move and didn't get to.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe it will be as crazy, but I do feel like we might have better inventory than we did then. So maybe it won't be so nuts. I guess we just need to talk more sellers into actually putting their houses up.
Yeah.
And maybe not as many people keeping them to rent them out, although we do need rentals as well. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So, right now, where are the interest rates? Interest rates are sitting at around that 5% territory.
Yeah, Katrina said she can do a 4.99.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 4.99, anywhere between 4.99 and 5.19 is kind of what I'm seeing right now.
Yeah.
There's also some speculation that I listened to this mortgage broker podcast, Angry Mortgage, which is awesome. I don't think he's a broker, actually. I think he's a TD or
Okay.
TD Bank, but lots of experience and super good content on there. And he was talking about how a lot of the bigger banks, what they typically do leading up to the spring market is they pad their interest rates. They like self-inflate them over the slower season so that they can make up for some of the losses that maybe they've had.
Yeah.
A lot of these banks have losses, like between potential foreclosures or like defaults, I should say, and a lot of these mortgages that were locked in for 5 years at 2% or whatever. Like that's not good business for the bank to be hanging on to those things. So, they self-inflate their interest rates, make them a little bit higher than everybody else. That's why you kind of see banks are always typically a little bit higher than credit unions with their posted rates.
Right.
Credit unions have an obligation to their members because it's a member-driven, it's a credit union. It's like it wouldn't exist without its members.
Right.
Are their own entity, so they don't really care about members as much.
No, exactly. They have to answer to their board members.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're shareholders. So so basically, they pad their bottom line essentially, and then they self-inflate the prices of their mortgages, and then they get the people that need to refinance, or they get the people that need to purchase, like the serious people throughout the slower season, and then in the spring they typically all compete and drop the rates.
Yeah.
So if that happens, we may see a bit of a downward trend, downward spiral again on the fixed rates.
Right.
When that happens, it could be February here, it could be March, but
yeah,
I noticed that they did that like pre-COVID in the market every spring. Like the rates would be so affordable, and all the banks would spend tons of money on advertising. Like
we'd have billboards all over 3.99.
Yeah. And trying to get people to come in and become members, right? And it's a business at the end of the day, and it's like a marketing strategy.
Right.
So that may happen, and we may see pressure on rates again.
Some craziness. Yeah. Exactly.
But between that and the cuts, like this year we may not see 3% rates, but we may see consistent 4% rates, which is like it's pretty balanced, I would say. Like it's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
And, I would say that's still quite low compared to the average. So
Exactly. Yeah, if we go back over the years and look at all the different rates we've had, like, yeah, we had it really good during COVID, but that was like emergency measures, right?
yeah,
Like, um,
pandemic response.
the 4.5s and 5.5s are way more normal.
Yeah,
Um, you know, so we're already within normal range.
yeah,
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah. So yeah, it'd be interesting year. Might be some volatility,
Yeah.
but the markets are saying that it may take a couple more years yet until things normalize
Right.
and get back to that 2% target that every central bank idolizes.
Yeah.
And um, we might see the central bank come out and say, like, maybe 3% is the new normal,
Right. Yeah.
because things are just more expensive now.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you pour in all this new money into the economy.
Yeah.
So, but it is what it is. So, do you want to? Maybe we'll get into our topic.
Sure. Yeah. Buying a house in the country.
Moving to the country.
Yeah. Yeah. So we love driving around the countryside, showing houses, and helping our clients figure out if buying in the country is for them, because it's not for everybody. And there's lots of things to consider when you're thinking about moving to the country. And there, I mean, you can move, like, I'm in a town in the country, so are you, right? Like, so yeah, we live in the country, but not like, we're not on acreage with less amenities and whatever. Where I'm in the town of Niverville, which has pretty much everything here.
Yeah.
So the only thing I have to consider really is that drive into the city all the time.
Yeah.
Extra gas. And if I had a really great social life, maybe I wouldn't want to live so far from the city, because then I'd be driving back and forth multiple times a day.
Yeah.
But just for work and back, it's fine. But if you're wanting to look at rural property, like actual property, I always find, like, I've had several people over the years decide to move to the country and then quickly change their mind a couple of years after buying and being like, this is too isolating. This is too much work, this whatever, right? Like, so many things. And sometimes people get overwhelmed with how much maintenance there can be. So yeah, it's good to have this conversation, right? So my first question always when someone says that they want to move to the country is, what do you want to do? Like, what is the expectation? What do you want to do with the property? Because we need to know, like, what restrictions we need to find out about, like, if a lot of people want to have horses or chickens or whatever, like, if that's what you're wanting to do, wanting to move to the country so that you don't have really close neighbors, yeah, we don't have to worry about the restrictions as much. Right? And then what amenities do you need to have? What schools are your kids, what schools would you like your kids to be going to, or does it matter, right? Like, if it doesn't matter, then we could be looking everywhere. If you really want them to be in French immersion, we need to be planning for that, right? Like, so, I mean, there's definitely areas with, and I know you dealt with clients last year that had very specific needs for a school, right? And so then, you have to consider that. And then you get into the actual property and, septic. Is it going to be just a holding tank? Is it a field? Does it have an ejection system that we're going to have to deal with decommissioning? And then, obviously we talk about what all that means, because if you're moving from the city and never having lived in the country, you might not know what all that means.
I find that the right people, they have experience already being in the country. It's the ones that
have never lived in the country, or their parents never lived in the country, right? And they're thinking, it sounds like a good idea to move to the country because everyone else is doing it.
people mind their own business. We don't have
Yeah.
to hear sirens all the time.
We want to free range our children and
Yeah.
right.
They all sound amazing and like ideal until a -40 blizzard hits and you're trying to, plow your driveway or, um, there's a lot of maintenance that comes with owning.
Or an emergency type storm. Like, do you
Yeah.
remember the storm of 2019 that happened in October and everyone's power was out? I won't say everyone's, but lots of people, including yours, were out for like 4 days.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I know my dad's was out for 4 days. And I had a client that lived in the country at the time, and they called us right after that storm and said, we need to list our house because we can't deal with that ever again.
Yeah.
Because we're at an age where that was way too much and almost killed us.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not for the faint of heart, I would say.
Right.
It's a great idea in theory, but you have to be prepared. And I find that the people who are the right buyers for something rural on acreage are the ones that maybe they're a contractor or they have some sort of business that requires them to build a shop or like have a home-based operation like that or a business like that, right?
Yeah, they want to have a money-making entity on the property.
Yeah, there's no way they could possibly do something like that within the city limits, so they kind of need to go outside of the city, but then they're like, well, we can do whatever we want, as long as we are abiding by the zoning bylaws and all that kind of
and
stuff.
that definitely brings in those regulations again, because can we do this? Can we have breed dogs or have a boarding facility or whatever? There's so many different things that people do that make moving to the country like you cannot do that in the city.
Well, the number one recommendation that I think we try to make to people is making sure that they're working with a professional or a realtor that understands the way this stuff all works within rural municipalities, like understands rural, because a lot of agents, they don't, and they don't know who to phone or they don't know who to call when it comes to,
and that's just it. I might not know exactly what you can do in every municipality, but I do know who to phone, right? And I do know the questions that need to be asked. Because if you're not dealing with someone who sells rural regularly, you don't even know what you don't know, right?
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. So, and every RM has such different ways of doing things and different rules, different, size restrictions.
Right.
For shops and home-based businesses and animals and their required acreage to support those things. So
it varies a ton.
A ton. And then you really have to think about the future, and like there's the work aspect of it, there's just general maintenance, obviously cutting the grass and plowing your driveway and topping up your driveway with gravel, just the maintenance aspect of it, making sure that it's kept up.
It's huge.
And so you have the yard that you have to consider. If there's any outbuildings you have to consider, but then you have the house. So whereas in the city, it's just like you got to worry about essentially just your house.
I mean, there's some small maintenance outside, but you can usually get all that outside stuff done one night a week, right? Like without it dragging into like.
I remember when I grew up in the country, we had like 15 acres, I think, and I was literally cutting the grass every single day. Like
exactly.
I'd be on the riding mower. I would do a section. Like, okay, today, I'm going to do in front of the house. So I'd go and do that. And then it would be dark, and then the next day I'd go and do another section. And by the time I'm on like section number 4, the first is already grown. So I have to go back and cut that, it's just like never ending.
It's never
So,
ending. Yeah, I know. That was my stepdad's like alone time during the
yeah,
day, right? Like you know how you need like a section of the day that's like for you. He
yeah,
loved to be on the riding tractor, so yeah, he would do like an hour a day, and he did like I don't know, a huge section, like including my grandparents. But yeah, and then yeah, literally starting over by the time you're
yeah,
done,
yeah.
right? Like,
It's constant
yeah,
upheaval,
constantly.
and
Yeah,
then
but
and then from the house side, if you have most properties, rural properties, they'll have a well, so
yeah,
you have to maintain your well, um, and make sure that it's working properly, your pump is working properly.
right.
Um,
Even about water treatment, because depending on where
water
you are, you
treatment,
may need breath removers or water
yeah,
softeners or
I have to shock it every once in a while,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then and
yeah,
then septic, if you're on a smaller acreage where you can't have a septic field, you may only have a tank. So, depending on how many people are living in the home,
yeah,
everything technically goes into the tank. Your liquid waste, like your gray water, and your solids.
right.
So you have to get the pump truck company, on speed dial, or have them on a system where they're on a schedule and they know to come out
Yeah,
like
they know to come out
once
every
every
4 weeks or 6 weeks or
4 weeks.
whatever it is your family needs. Yeah,
Yeah, and that can get expensive depending on the amount of usage. Maybe you have an ejector system, and those are less common nowadays, but there are a lot of rural properties that have them grandfathered in and
yeah.
inspected. And
Typically more than 20 acres.
yeah, and those are definitely nice because you don't have to worry about a field failing. All the gray water just gets pumped into the bush somewhere, and all you
Yeah,
have to worry about is a holding tank getting pumped like maybe once every 6 months or a year and a
yeah,
half. So that is the most ideal, but it's not as common anymore because RMs don't like it because of contamination and whatever else.
yeah.
So your third thing is a field, and fields have a life expectancy depending how they're built. That'll how to determine the economic life of when that thing is going to go. You know,
Right.
I've had some clients, they were totally country bumpkins and they totally knew how to prepare for this kind of stuff. And then the unexpected happens, and then they walk out into their backyard and they're stepping in gray water because their field is failing.
It's
Yeah,
saturated. Yeah.
yeah. And then you either have to know how to fix it yourself or you got to know a guy. And if you hire a company, like it's not cheap, like it's a huge job.
Yeah.
So these are all things that people should take into consideration. But I
Right.
mean, like if you're from the country, then it's just these are all just things that you deal
It's
with.
just all normal, right? Like it doesn't
All this stuff.
matter. But yeah, if you've never lived in the country or you weren't responsible for the maintenance when you lived in the country,
Yeah.
yeah, it can all be new and overwhelming.
The other,
Um,
the other thing to take into consideration too, if you're somebody who's moving to the country for the first time, is like people just think about, okay, I have my closing costs, I have my down payment, I have my legal fees, I've got my utilities that I want to budget for. But what about like equipment? You know, you have to factor in, do I need a tractor? Do I need a push blade? Do I need a bucket? Do I need a trailer? Do I
yeah,
need a quad? Do I need a riding mower? Do I
yeah,
need, like,
yeah.
do I
Or
need
is there
a snow blower?
how much will that cost if I have to hire someone to do my super long driveway?
Yeah.
Or, yeah,
I know in the Springfield area, like around Enola and stuff like that, there's a girl, I think her name is Julian Hare. She owns a snow removal company and she
oh
drives
yeah,
a skid steer, and she has a lot of people on contract because if you have an elderly couple or an older couple that it's just too much work for them to do it.
right.
You can put her on contract, and every time it snows she'll be out, her
Yeah,
crew will be out, and it's that's definitely a possibility, but those are all things that people need to factor in, you
yeah,
know you think you don't need it until you get like a big dumping of snow, and then you can't get out of your driveway, and you're like, oh man, okay, I got to prepare a little bit more for this.
Yeah, I remember the very first snowstorm we had after me and Jameis moved into our first house in Enola. And it was a bad winter for snowstorms. So like we had to quickly come up with something to do, because the very first time he literally had to shovel my way to the highway because the snow was so bad. So because I had to work on a Saturday, and he was like, so he was off, and he literally shoveled and kept pushing my car and shoveling and pushing my car until I finally got onto the highway. Because like had only been at my job for like a month. There was no way I was not going to be there. And the poor guy pushed me and shoveled me until I got to the highway. And then I got in those ruts and just followed the big trucks all the way to the city.
Yeah, you don't really appreciate the trees until you get a big blizzard.
Yeah.
And and then you appreciate how well shelter belts work. And and like I mean, so that's another thing to consider too. Like, a lot of people, they want acreage, but acreages that are completely set up, where it's got like 30-year-old trees or 40-year-old trees, shelter belt, everything is like kind of turnkey, ready to go in terms of the yard. Those are going to be a little bit more expensive than just a bare bones piece of farmland that's zoned residential.
Yeah.
You have to do all that stuff.
Right.
And so it's not just all about price at the end of the day, because by the time you factor in the cost of trees and, the cost of servicing with hydro and the cost of yield and the cost of all that stuff, things tend to add up pretty quick.
Sure.
So, and just the appreciation of having a mature country property that's like
a winter wonderland.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's amazing.
I love those, right? Like those are my favorite, but yeah, they are not as common to find, and often often more sought after, so there's more competition.
Yeah. And then the isolation factor, like I mean, that's a real thing.
Right.
To consider too, like if you, depending on how close you are to a town or school, or if you have kids, like
I find that's usually the people that say that they're feeling isolated, is like they've moved to the country because they want to give their children that country experience. Mom's staying home because they had another baby, and like it's expensive to be driving to the city every day when you're on mat leave, and suddenly you've gone like a week and a half without having seen a person other than children. Right? So yeah, you definitely have to work hard at creating a community out there. Like you can't just which I think is easier nowadays with Facebook and moms groups and stuff like that. But I think back to so many of my clients that we moved them back from the country back to the city because they were isolated, and they're it really affects their mental health and stuff like that. So like they feel like they need to move back to the city, right? You have to make a conscious effort to actually whether it's the neighbors or going to the local church mom group, just so that you do see someone outside of your household on a regular basis, right? Because otherwise you're going to feel like the only friends you have are the deer.
For me personally, I could totally pick it all up and I move to the bush and I live like I'm on alone and make friends with the animals and wake up when the sun wakes up and go to bed when the sun goes down. And
that sounds good to me for a few days, but even after, like, I know myself, right? Like I've been in real estate for how long now? I don't, whatever, it doesn't matter. But I always found every January I go crazy because we tend to not have as many appointments. We're not out and about as much. And, I was very busy this January, but most Januaries, like there have been times where my husband's like, go on a vacation or go, right? Like go see your grandpa or go like in,
they're crazy.
whatever. Because I would literally, pounce on him when he got home from work because I haven't.
Yeah.
And because I do need people.
Yeah.
I know I need the outside world. But I do love the quiet as well. Don't get me wrong. Like I still love to, be out in the trees and at the lake and all that stuff. But I also need people. So it is a thing.
It would be cool to have a commune.
Oh God, yeah.
A bunch of people on a big acreage, and
that's my ideal retirement.
everybody has a job that they do. It's like this person, they grow the food. This person, they hunt the food. This person, they do all the maintenance on the equipment. This person, they whatever. Like
yeah,
like that would be amazing.
Yeah.
But then that's also the perfect premise to a horror movie.
Yes, it does sound. Yeah, or several awful books I've read.
Yeah. Just snap.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think another thing we didn't talk about is the different types of heating systems that you might see in the country. Yeah. So like, of course, the typical one being electric furnace, but I've seen all kinds of different boiler systems that are, maybe not even fully contained inside the house.
Yeah.
They have the wood boiler outside that's feeding the house maybe in floor heat or whatnot, right? So like there's all different types. Yeah, pellets is another big one. So again, different maintenance, different levels of work. Like if you're having to cut wood in order to heat your house, that there's that
durability as well. Like
exactly.
A lot of people want a wood stove, but you need to make sure that it's wet certified and that insurance wants to keep insurance on it, because if you burn your house down, then you're screwed.
Right. Yes.
Can't get insurance.
Yes.
But yeah, when I grew up in the country, we had we had a wood boiler system.
Yeah.
So it was like a huge incinerator type shed looking thing outside.
Yeah.
And then it had like a burner underneath, and we would just load wood in there, and then it would heat the boiler. And that was awesome, actually. It was really, it was a lot of fun to throw wood in there. And then we had a backup electric heater that was basically like an electric wall heater. And when the thermostat would drop, like when the wood would burn out, the thermostat would drop, then the electric heater would kick in just for backup source.
Sure. Yeah.
Like if you weren't around for 8 hours or something like that to feed the wood, then at least you still came home and you didn't have frozen pipes.
Yeah. You didn't wake up in the morning to a frozen house. Yeah.
Yeah. But the one thing that I hated was, which is not as common, I don't see it as much anymore. I mean, there's still some communities that do have it, but we had a water cistern.
Oh yeah.
And it was on the outside of the house.
Yeah.
And so it's like a big concrete pit in the ground that you have to fill with water, and then there's a pump that pumps the water through a filter, through a softener into your house. And so a few miles down the road, we had to, there's a local water company that you'd pay to bring water and they would fill you up. But my dad had a pump truck, actually, like a tanker truck, and we used to take that and get water filled. So I mean that's like a whole afternoon, or Saturday or Sunday, that's kind of wasted just doing that.
Right.
So I feel like in hindsight, like I was really young, but if I was my old man, I'd be like, let's spend the 8 to 12 grand, get a well drilled, and just cap off.
I think in some areas it's just difficult. Like I don't know about where you guys are living, but I hear West Winnipeg doesn't have great water, so most people don't want a well.
Yeah.
And then like places like Lac du Bonnet and stuff, there's so much rock that there's no way it's only going to be 15 grand
Right.
to punch in a well, or you literally can't, right?
Yeah.
Because the rock is so hard.
Yeah, it's
Hmm.
yeah, it just depends on where you are. There's so many factors to consider.
Right.
Internet access is a big one, but nowadays with Starlink, you can get a pretty decent package with Starlink and be kind of off grid and have decent internet.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of companies out there now, like High Speed
Valley
Pro,
Fiber.
Valley Fiber, and those companies that will
Right.
offer. And then if you buy an acreage, this is another thing that I have experienced in the past. Some people, they'll buy more than they need. So like in terms of land, so you might have a house that's on 2 acres, which is manageable. There might be a house and a shop and some outbuildings, but the total property is like 10 acres. And you're like, well, I don't like the idea of having that many acres is nice because it's like freedom and you can do whatever you
And
want.
if it's all trees, it's like great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then if it's like 2 acres of yard site with shelter belt and then 8 acres of land, then it's like, well, what's the point, right? So a lot of people, what they can do is if you're on an adjacent, like if you're next to a farmland, like agricultural zone land, you can contact the farmer who owns that land and you can rent it to them. And sometimes people use that to help supplement some of the costs, expenses, or property taxes or whatever. And you can establish a long-term relationship with a neighboring farmer to essentially utilize your land, but they're paying you to do it. So if you're not going to use it,
not just for grain and growing, also for like pasture, even, right? Like So
and then garbage. So like if you move out to the country, you're obviously going to have garbage. What do you do with it? So you have to either have a trailer and you have to find the closest dump, pay the dump fees, or you can get an annual pass for the dump. And then you load up your own garbage. There are companies that you can pay to come out and pick up your garbage. When I was a kid, to be honest, I know it's not the best thing in the world, but we just burnt everything, literally. And that was like another, I don't know. It was a lot of fun as a kid, just lighting fires all over the place.
Lighting fires, yeah. I remember my brother enjoying that too when he was young, but and it was all fun until we burnt down the bush.
I used to have to take the tractor and go and take like deadfall out of the bush and then pile it up, and then we would literally just dump garbage on there until we had like a mountain, and then just light it up and have a big blaze stand around.
I think another thing that brings to mind is the wildlife.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you're like, sometimes you're like, oh, I'm just going to throw it out there for now, and then he's going to burn it later or whatever. And one time my brother had, his job was garbage when we were young. And so he piled it up in the sunroom, which was screened. And a skunk decided to make our sunroom its home since it had a pile of food there. A pile of garbage to go through. So then, you have to think of like the different wildlife that you could be attracting in the different ways that you do things, right? You could be attracting bears, skunks, anything.
Yeah.
And you live in the country, so there are bears and coyotes and wolves and all those things. So, letting your dog roam free all the time isn't necessarily the greatest if it can't, protect itself, because you do have to worry about those. I know, I've heard horror stories of people's cats getting let out accidentally, and then
I know somebody who moved out to the country past Anola, and they had chickens, or they still have chickens.
Yeah.
I guess they had this little chicken that was kind of like a runt, and so they took it into the house all the time. It was like their house pet, and the kids chicken's name is Cluckers.
Yeah.
So, and Cluckers got jacked by an eagle.
Oh yeah.
So kids are outside playing.
Yeah. So
Holding
not
the,
even the
hold,
big predators I was saying.
yeah,
An eagle is just as bad. Yep.
holding the chicken, and an eagle came, swooped down, grabbed it.
Out of the kids' arms?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh my God. I always think that my dogs are safe as long as I'm like right with them.
Oh yeah.
But I guess they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, that's an eagle for you, but
Yeah.
like,
I when we were in Enola, like I had Chihuahuas and I would be out there and almost they knew my yell, my yell when the birds started, not birds, like usually one bird would start to circle. And I'd be like, in the house now, and they would run straight to that.
yeah,
Because it was a different yell.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's that's definitely a consideration, is like
Yeah.
the animals, predators.
Predators, yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah,
but yeah, with all that being said, country living is pretty amazing, and
it is.
you know, if you can handle it, then like it's definitely worth it. It builds so much character. Kids actually play outside, have an imagination, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and if you can find a sense of community within the country, like you said, through community Facebook groups and stuff like that, or
Yeah.
different events,
Signing up for hockey. That's
yeah,
rural hockey is massive. Same with
yeah,
curling because of those reasons. Yeah.
yeah, and it can be really great and not feel so isolating and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, if anybody, you know, has questions about buying rural or need a rural expert, like we're definitely familiar with it. So yeah, give us a call for sure.
Absolutely.
So I think that ends our topic for this week, and maybe we could show show some gratitude for some local businesses that we've used recently. I know it's been a while since the last podcast, and there are so many places that businesses that I've gone to and stuff like that. But for me, so Tara and I went out for drinks with some people to Smith Restaurant, and we've been
Oh,
there on and off in the past, and yeah, we really liked it. You know, got to have some good food, and the cocktails were unreal. It was really
oh
good,
yeah.
and I really like the atmosphere in there. And so that would be, you know, one of my picks for, you know, this episode is Smith. And then the cabinet manufacturer Twilight. So there's a cabinet maker out of Neepawa called Twilight Manufacturing.
Yeah.
And they make cabinets for some of the builders that I sell for, and they do a really good job. They're totally custom, so if somebody wants like a kitchen designed their way with custom uh, built-ins, or you know, a big thing now, people, I'm seeing people doing these appliance garages, they call them.
Yeah.
It's like cabinets or like a pull-up door on top of the counter to hide all your small appliances. They do
Yeah.
stuff like that, and so anything custom, but they also do really nice like basic cabinets too. So they do everything from thermofoil, HDF, MDF, maple, oak, um, and all of the colors of the rainbow, basically. Um, and they have like some really nice. They're really good at keeping up with the trends, the color palettes and stuff like that, like your Benjamin Moore paint colors.
Hmm.
And we're seeing a lot more people doing like, you know, off whites, like cream kitchens, or uh, kind of like a light green, like an olive type cabinet, or
Right. That's
like
super popular.
yeah, like a bluish cabinet, like a lighter blue
Yeah.
cabinet. And they're really durable. The way that they, even on their thermofoil, the way they wrap their doors, they don't delaminate, they don't pull apart. They're just quality, I would say. So soft close hardware, all that kind of stuff. And every builder that has used them, or every person that's done a reno with them, they seem to really enjoy their quality. So I'm going to shout them out because, you know, dealing with builders who have good cabinet makers make my job easier. So those are my picks for this week.
Awesome. Mine, I had my girls groomed again yesterday, and my dogs. And yeah, they always do such an amazing job. That's at Perfect Paws.
Oh yeah.
It's on the Salle Road. And yeah, so they get dropped off there. They spend some time playing with other dogs. They get groomed. They play with other dogs. They get lots of love.
Yeah.
You know, I can tell that they get lots of love even when I'm not there because they love going there. And my girls don't always love every place that I want to drop them off. But they love going there. They love the people. They love the dogs. So that's always fun. And I am going to shout out Doug and Betty's. They are a really cute little restaurant on the corner of Marion and Desmirons.
Okay.
And they're well known for their small batch ice cream, but they also have a full menu to have lunch and supper.
Oh.
Yeah, and they recently had it was international or maybe national, I don't know. It was the day for ice cream for breakfast, so they opened up for breakfast and served ice cream for breakfast on Saturday. And so yeah, they had like waffles and ice cream and fruit and different toppings and stuff. So it was awesome. And they have lots of other options there too. And they'll also do larger events. Like they catered my friend's she left her job. I'm trying to think of going away party, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Leaving her job party.
Yeah.
And she moved from one job to another job within the same company or like within the division that she works for.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, they had a lunch when she was leaving. So catered it. It was amazing, she said. Yeah, so it's a really nice little restaurant. I know that they're having a little bit of a hard time because it was both Desmirons and Marion were under construction for most of last year. So they're still getting caught up, and you know, giving them your business would be, I'm sure, really greatly appreciated. The owner is who served us. Like, he was amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And Doug and Betty, who the store is named after, are their dogs. So that is
cool.
more fun.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yes. And if you're going there just for ice cream, they do have a dog menu as well.
Oh, cool. Oh, so they have stuff for dogs.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes. Cool. He's always got something fun, and his flavors are always very creative. He has like some like basics that he always keeps, like his regulars, and then he always has, like, recently he did like a cinnamon bun flavor ice cream with actual like large chunks of cinnamon bun in it.
Oh man.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. My girlfriend bought a pint of that. So because you can buy pints there too. You don't have to just go there for ice cream.
Nice.
So yeah, that's Doug and Betty's. So that's good. Now I'm salivating.
Salivating, me too. Might need ice cream for lunch.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I had it for breakfast the other day and it was amazing. Yeah. But anyway, so that's that. Thanks for watching our podcast. And we hope to bring you more relevant content.
Yeah. And like, share, subscribe. And if you guys have any real estate questions, you want to move to the country, give us a call.
Awesome.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.